He was overwhelming Ivarage. He effortlessly dominated the combat against Ivarage, pushing him back toward the Heavenward Palace once again. Because of this, the burden on those watching was alleviated. As expected of Guy, Velzert said, looking proud. With the sword world drawn, Guy is invincible. He effortlessly bisected and obliterated even the destruction rays Ivarage fired. In contrast to the delighted Velzert, Velgren was dumbfounded. You kidding, right? I took a direct hit from that and lost a massive amount of energy. Even though it was to protect the weak, the fact remained that she had taken it head-on and failed to break through. Guy, however, was doing just that without difficulty. Realizing he was far more powerful than she had assumed, Velgren was once again astonished by Guy's tremendous strength. Smiling, Velzert explained to Velgren. Naturally. Guy sliced apart even my strongest secret art, white out absorb with a single stroke. It goes without saying that an inferior attack wouldn't work on him. Velzert knew Guy's strength better than anyone. That was precisely why she had a somewhat twisted obsession with him, but now she was simply happy that her beloved Guy was being praised. What a troublesome older sister, Velgren thought, though she had no choice but to agree. In reality, Guy was strong. Ivarage caught a blow from World, which Guy seemed to have unleashed casually, using karma. However, Ivarage lost the contest of strength and was blown away. Although the rank of their swords was equal, there was a difference between heaven and earth in their skill levels. Kayaha. Ha, you're not much of a big deal either. Combined with overwhelming sword speed and efficient blade work, Ivarage's amateurish swordsmanship could not keep up. Furthermore, Guy was not naive enough to allow Ivarage to grow during the fight. Mu, this is strange. I struggled so much, yet Guy looks like he has the upper hand. This makes Guy look stronger than me. Milim lamented in frustration. In fact, it was obvious to anyone watching that Guy's ability was superior. I was devoted to stalling for time, so I wasn't using my full power. If I were serious, I wouldn't lose. That was Valdor's bluff, acting as if he wanted to say, if I were serious, I'd be above him. Considering he used the word serious twice, there was a strong sense of a sore loser in his tone. Right, that's right. I was just tired, that's all. Milim added her own excuse. Indeed. If it were me, I wouldn't struggle at all. Kruhahaha. Velzert caught on to that remark. Oh my. Are you trying to say that you are above Guy, Valdor-chan? Eh? Valdor froze, as if time had stopped for an instant. The color of panic rose in his expression, regretting that he had said something unnecessary. Well, that is to say. It looks like Guy is unleashing a cool technique. Valdor used his quick wits to successfully divert Velzert's attention and interest. And he swore strongly in his heart never to step on a landmine like that again. Paying no mind to the reactions of the peanut gallery, Guy coolly drove Ivarage into a corner. He had left Veldanava to Rimuru, but he understood that it was a tall order. Well, that bastard might manage somehow, but Veldanava is stronger than me. I need to finish this guy quickly and go back him up. Guy was unexpectedly dutiful. If he knew Rimuru had left it to Feldway and was watching from a safe distance, he would undoubtedly be furious. Unaware of this, Guy was observing Ivarage. Guy's strength essentially began with observing his opponent. He possessed no arrogance despite being a powerhouse. Regardless of the opponent, he would discern their weakness and strike it. However, since Guy never really fought truly weak opponents, his observation had a hidden crucial intent. It was meant to grasp the authority and special abilities the opponent possessed and make them his own. The countless experiences piled up in this manner supported Guy as the absolute strongest. It was the same even against Ivarage. Ivarage possessed special abilities, but did not possess authorities like ultimate skills. Even without such things, it stood at the highest peak as a god of destruction. However, against Guy, things were different. Kayaha. Useless. Guy easily parried the brute force sword strikes, and that was the end of it. In a comparison of existence value, Ivarage was overwhelmingly higher, but in terms of instantaneous maximum output, Guy was superior. Like Diablo, Guy could gather magicules from the atmosphere, allowing him to treat his maximum energy capacity as his maximum output limit. In this context, magicules referred to magic essence energy. It meant he could continue fighting without consuming his own reserves. Despite having just gone through a long battle with Velzert, Guy was in a state of almost zero exhaustion. There was fatigue, but it was at a level he could ignore. This combat sense was Guy's greatest strength. Through several minutes of combat, Ivarage also came to understand Guy's danger. The appearance of an enemy that could not be defeated with overwhelming power was a surprise to Ivarage. However, the emotion Ivarage felt was delight. Kayaha. Ivarage's presence changed. From a child just playing with toys to a lump of curiosity trying to learn from its opponent. In a form mimicking the peerless beauty known as Lucia, with the cruelty of a child floating on its face, Ivarage stared at Guy with unclouded eyes, appearing more terrifying than ever before. Ivarage was remembering. I know. I remember. Long ago, Ivarage had suffered a painful experience at the hands of Gi. It had been forced to flee from the surface world to the other world. It hadn't developed an ego back then, and had only felt it as painful, but now it recalled the irritation of that time. You hate. What a coincidence. I hate you too. Gi responded and resumed his attack on Ivarage. However, from this point on, Ivarage began to show its true worth. Although it had taken the form of Lucia, its body was Ivarage. Even if cut, it was recreated by Godspeed regeneration, so slashing attacks dealt almost no damage. Gi was adding impact to his strikes to accumulate damage throughout Ivarage's body, but the speed of regeneration was a bottleneck. It would take a considerable amount of time for Ivarage to become exhausted. Naturally, Gi understood this. He was still in the phase of watching for an opening, intending to make his move once he found a decisive factor. The reality was that he couldn't afford to be so leisurely, but Gi did not panic. He intended to corner it steadily and finish it with certainty. But then, a change occurred in Ivarage. Kayaha. The holy remains of Lucia that Ivarage had eaten still contained information about the authorities Lucia once harbored. Although fragmented and not retaining their original form, that didn't matter to Ivarage. Individual name. Ivarage has acquired the ultimate skill Lord of Wisdom Raphael. The voice of the world rang out inside Ivarage's brain. From the remnants left in Lucia's holy remains, Ivarage had accomplished the restoration of the authority. From here on, Ivarage increased its skill level at an astonishing speed. Tisk, what a troublesome guy. Gi clicked his tongue in annoyance. Gi had not let his guard down from the start, but with Ivarage changing at this stage, he realized he had to abandon the hope of a quick resolution. Sorry, Rimuru. This one looks like it's going to drag on. Gi apologized to Rimuru in a mutter. And while revising his plan to defeat Ivarage, he continued to observe even more deeply. The clash of swords between Gi and Ivarage grew increasingly intense. Impossible for a normal person to visually track. In this case, normal person meant anyone below the super awakened million class. In other words, for the majority of the world, it was impossible to even perceive this battle. Or rather, just being in this place would likely turn one to dust instantly, due to the pressure of the swords. Such a tremendous offense and defense was unfolding, yet the real battle had not even begun. Currently, Ivarage was learning in real time. Not only from Gi's techniques, but also from the memories within its own body. The primary source was the memories of Lucia, the base of its current form. Although fragmented and incomplete, the techniques the body remembered were easy to reproduce. She was Rudra's sister and the wife of Eldanava. Her existence value in life had exceeded 1 million, making her a super awakened million-class existence that had transcended lifespan. There was no way such a Lucia could be weak. Though not to the extent of her brother Rudra, she had mastered sword skills to a certain degree. Ivarage mastered them in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, not stopping there, it scrutinized all the information particles of those it had devoured, reproducing every technique that seemed useful. Because of this, it was becoming skilled enough to rival Gi. Tisk, isn't this growth speed a bit too abnormal? Gi clicked his tongue and complained. He had never held back and had aimed for a quick settlement. Yet, his plan had gone significantly awry. Kayaha. Ivarage thrust its empty left hand forward. Just before the palm was aimed at him, Gi sensed danger and leaped away from the spot. Immediately after, a sub-light speed destruction ray was fired from the palm, piercing through the space where Gi had been. If he had been a step slower, his body would have been pierced. The destruction ray collided with the wall of the heavenward palace, shaking the building violently. It was a terrifying impact, but its power was incomparable to when it was fired without being condensed. The pain differs between being hit by a surface and being stabbed by a needle tip, even with the same amount of energy. By the same logic, the condensed destruction ray saw its power jump by orders of magnitude, despite having the same energy. Seeing this, he kept a cool face, but the others were at a loss for words. Gunyunu, that looks like it rivals the power of my Drago Nova. Well, I could withstand it. You fool. There is no point in arguing whether you can withstand it or not. That's right. Either way, taking it over a surface results in a higher energy loss rate. Even if you condense it and pierce the target, the total damage amount seems like it would be lower. Millum and Valdora were just acting tough, but Velgrand and Velzard were analyzing calmly. Velgrand nodded, agreeing that Velzard's point was correct. In fact, Velgrand was simulating the scenario on herself to predict which would cause greater damage. The answer was that taking it over a surface increases the defensive area, and would likely consume a massive amount of energy. For spiritual life forms, the loss of physical body parts is merely damage that can be regenerated. Since they don't have vital organs like humans, having a hole blown in their body is not a fatal wound. However, if hit in a bad spot, one might lose their lower body, making continued combat difficult. If one ends up consuming a massive amount of energy to compensate for that, the damage would exceed acceptable levels. In that sense, judgment at that moment whether to ignore it and take the hit, dodge it, or defend against it became crucial. He chose evasion this time. Therefore, his energy loss was 0. Not only that, but this served as a crucial setup. If you ask what that is, Kayaha. Ivarage was convinced of its superiority. Because Gi, who had effortlessly sliced apart the destruction rays before, had dodged the condensed beam. The destruction rays fired to cover the entire area, had the convenience of allowing rapid fire without aiming. When condensed, one has to worry about accuracy, but if considered play, that too was fun. As if engrossed in a new game, Ivarage fired condensed destruction rays at Gi wildly. Kai-ha-ha-ha. For Ivarage, who boasted a bottomless amount of magic essence energy, this level of rapid fire was like a walk in the park. Feeling no fatigue, it thrust its left hand forward, firing condensed destruction rays continuously. Gi dodged. Even if they were sublight speed attacks, he perfectly predicted the impact points from the movement of Ivarage's palm, the distortion of the air, and the smell of burning atmosphere. While doing so, he readied whirled and aimed for Ivarage. I'll end this soon. Cheeky. Look who's talking. He slipped through the barrage of condensed destruction rays, and closed in on Ivarage. Then, thrusting whirled held in his right hand, he aimed for Ivarage's heart. That was Ivarage's central core. Due to his high energy density, it was predicted to be one of its weaknesses. Once he had slipped inside his guard, Ivarage's sword and destruction rays were effectively sealed. If Gi's attack connected as is, the battle should be decided. Kayaha. Whirled, thrust by Gi, closed in on Ivarage. At that moment, Ivarage's chest glowed. The high energy density was because it intended to fire a beam from there. My win. The sublight speed condensed destruction ray, fired at point-blank range, reached Gi's chest before it could even disperse. It was not a timing where he could dodge. For Gi, it was a desperate situation. It was natural for Ivarage to be convinced of its victory, however.